The glass of the penthouse window shattered into a million glittering diamonds before the crack of the gunshot even registered in Maya's brain. 1 second, she was handing Ryu a crystal tumbler of Macallan. The next, a massive, heavy hand clamped onto the back of her neck, taking them both forcefully to the hardwood floor. He didn't flinch. He didn't gasp. Ryu Jinwoo, the heir to the most brutal syndicate in Seoul, just shielded her body with his own while bullets tore through the Italian leather sofas right above them. Maya, his voice vibrated against her ear, low, steady, and terrifyingly calm. Are you hit? No, she choked out, her heart hammering violently against her ribs, dust raining down on her hair. No, I'm okay. He rolled off her in one fluid motion, pulling a matte black Glock from the holster hidden beneath his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit. He didn't look like a man whose life was just attempted. He looked like a man who was about to go to work. This was her life. This was the man she belonged to. Well, not belonged to. Not officially. She was his executive secretary. She managed his multi-billion-dollar legitimate tech empire by day and by night. She shared his bed. It was supposed to be a flawless, cold, strictly physical arrangement. Before they ever crossed that line 2 years ago, he sat her down in his dimly lit office. She could still see the way the city lights hit his sharp jawline, the cold, empty look in his dark eyes as he poured them both a drink. He had slid a glass toward her, his fingers brushing hers, sending a spark up her arm that she tried desperately to ignore. "We can do this, Maya," he had murmured, his voice a dark, seductive rasp that made her stomach flutter. "Because I want you. And I know you want me. But I need you to understand exactly who and what I am. I am not a good man. I am not a savior. There is no white picket fence at the end of this road." She had swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not asking for a white picket fence, sir." He hated when she called him sir behind closed doors. His jaw ticked. "Good. We can be friends. We can be lovers. But there is one rule. Just one, Maya. Do not fall in love with me, because I will never love you back. And if you cross that line, I will cut you out of my life without a second thought. Do we have a deal?" She looked at this beautiful, dangerous man. A man who held the Seoul underworld in the palm of his hand. A man who changed women like he changed his luxury watches. She thought she was strong enough. She thought she could separate her heart from her body. "Deal," she had whispered. She was an absolute fool. Because staring at him now, as he calmly reloaded his weapon in the dark, watching the lethal, predatory grace of his movements, Maya knew she had broken the only rule he gave her. She was completely, hopelessly, and dangerously in love with a monster. The next morning, it was as if the assassination attempt had never happened. That was the most terrifying part about Ryu. His ability to just compartmentalize violence. Maya walked into the top floor of Jinwoo Enterprises, balancing 2 black coffees, her tablet, and a stack of legal documents. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floors. She wore a sharp, emerald green pencil skirt and a crisp white blouse. Her armor. She needed it today. She pushed open the heavy oak doors to his office. He was already there, standing by the new bulletproof floor-to-ceiling windows, talking rapid-fire in Korean on his phone. He looked immaculate. Not a single hair out of place. No sign of the man who had shot 2 assassins dead in his living room just 8 hours prior. He ended the call and turned to her. His dark eyes scanned her from head to toe, a slow, deliberate sweep that made her skin flush. But his voice when he spoke was pure business. "Tell me the board approved the acquisition, Maya." "They are hesitant," she said, setting his coffee down on the polished mahogany desk. "Mr. Park thinks the merger with the Japanese tech firm is a front for your extracurricular activities." Ryu smirked. A cold, dangerous curve of his lips. "Mr. Park is entirely too perceptive for a man with a gambling debt that large. Schedule a private lunch with him for tomorrow. Just the 2 of us. It'll make sure his hesitation is cleared up." "Ryu, you can't just threaten the board members every time they disagree with you," Maya sighed, pulling up her schedule on the tablet, trying to ignore the way her pulse jumped. He stepped closer. The scent of bergamot, expensive cedar, and something uniquely him wrapped around her. He reached out, his long fingers gently taking the tablet out of her hands and tossing it onto the desk. "I don't threaten, Maya," he murmured, stepping into her personal space. The temperature in the room seemed to spike. "I merely negotiate with extreme prejudice." She looked up into his eyes. They were completely unreadable. "You're going to get yourself indicted before the quarter ends." "Let them try," he whispered, his gaze dropping to her lips. For a split second, the cold CEO vanished. The man who held her in the dark the night before was there. His thumb brushed her lower lip, sending a jolt of electricity straight to her core. Are you terrified yet, Maya? Of the board? She breathed out, unable to step away. Of me. Before she could answer, the office intercom buzzed loudly, shattering the moment. Mr. Jinwoo. The receptionist's voice echoed into the room. Miss Choi is here to see you. Instantly, Ryu stepped back. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by an icy, untouchable glaze. The Playboy mask slammed back into place so fast it gave Maya whiplash. Send her in, he said smoothly. Miss Choi, an heiress to a massive shipping fortune. Beautiful, thin, with porcelain skin and a laugh that sounded like expensive crystal. She was his current public accessory. The woman he paraded in front of the cameras to keep the press focused on his love life and away from his family's criminal operations. Maya picked up her tablet, her chest tightening with that familiar, sickening pang of jealousy. I'll leave you to your meeting, sir. Maya, he called out right as her hand hit the doorknob. She paused, not looking back. Clear my schedule for tonight. I'm taking Jia to the charity gala. Of course, sir. Have a wonderful evening. Maya walked out of the office and let the heavy door click shut behind her. She leaned against the cool wall, squeezing her eyes shut. This was the deal. This was what she signed up for. But every time he smiled at another woman, every time he played the part, it felt like he was slowly twisting a knife in her ribs. Hey guys, if you are absolutely loving the crazy tension between Ryu and Maya so far, please take a quick second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out, and you definitely don't want to miss what happens when Ryu's Playboy mask finally slips. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have signed that dangerous contract? Let's get right back to the story. The grand ballroom of the Seoul Grand Hyatt was dripping in diamonds and deceit. Chandeliers roughly the size of small cars bathed the room in a warm, golden light. Waiters in white gloves floated through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne that cost more than Maya's monthly salary. She was standing near the back, blending into the shadows near the grand marble pillars. She wore a simple, elegant black slip dress. Unobtrusive. Invisible. Exactly what a secretary should be. Her eyes, however, were locked onto the center of the room. Ryu was holding court. He looked devastatingly handsome in a midnight blue tuxedo. Jia, the shipping heiress, was draped over his arm like a silk scarf, laughing loudly at something he said. He smiled down at her, a perfect, charming, entirely empty smile. Maya took a slow sip of her club soda, feeling the carbonation burn the back of her throat. She hated her. She hated him. But mostly she hated herself. He's quite the sight, isn't he? Maya jumped slightly. A man had stepped up beside her. He was Korean, heavily tattooed beneath his tailored suit, with a nasty scar running through his left eyebrow. His smile was sharp and completely predatory. She instantly recognized him from the encrypted syndicate files Ryu had her organize. Kang Daeun, the underboss of the Viper clan. Ryu's biggest, most violent rival in the underground. Excuse me? Maya said, keeping her voice perfectly flat and professional, trying to hide her racing heart. Kang chuckled, taking a sip of his dark liquor. Ryu Jinwoo, playing the perfect corporate prince. It's a very good act. But we both know what he really does when the cameras are off, don't we, Miss Maya? Her blood ran completely cold. He knew her name. I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Kang. Mr. Jinwoo is a respected businessman. Kang stepped closer, invading her space. He smelled like stale smoke and expensive, heavy cologne. Loyal. I like that. You're much too pretty to be fetching coffee for a rabid dog like him. Tell me, does he treat you well? Or are you just another one of his late-night toys he keeps hidden away from the cameras? Her breath hitched. Her hands gripped her glass so tightly her knuckles turned white. Step away from me. Come on now, Kang sneered, reaching out and trailing a rough finger down her bare arm. A woman like you shouldn't be standing in the shadows while he parades that skinny little heiress around. Why don't you come work for me? I put you right front and center. Take your hand off her. The voice cut through the ambient noise of the ballroom like a scythe. Maya spun around. Ryu was standing 10 feet away. The charming playboy smile was gone. His face was a mask of absolute, terrifying fury. His dark eyes were locked onto Kang's hand, which was still resting on her arm. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet 20 degrees. Jia, the heiress, was standing behind him, looking confused and slightly annoyed. Ryu, darling, what are you doing? Who is this? Ryu didn't even look at her. He didn't blink. He walked slowly toward them, his footsteps silent on the thick carpet. The air around him crackled with lethal intent. Every instinct in Maya's body screamed at her to run, not from Kong, but from Ryu. This was the Mafia boss, the ruthless killer. Kong smirked, dropping his hand but standing his ground. Jinwoo, we were just having a friendly chat. Your secretary is a very engaging conversationalist. Ryu stopped inches from Kong. He tilted his head slightly. When he spoke, his voice was so low, so utterly devoid of humanity, it made Maya's stomach drop into her shoes. If you ever speak to her again, Kong, if you ever look at her again, if you ever even breathe in her direction, I will cut off your hands, feed them to my dogs, and mail your head to your father in a cardboard box. Do you understand me? A heavy, suffocating silence fell over their little corner of the ballroom. Kang's smirk faltered. The color instantly drained from his face. He tried to puff out his chest to maintain face, but the sheer, overwhelming dominance rolling off Ryu was impossible to fight. Are you threatening me over a secretary, Jinwoo? In public? Kong hissed, glancing around nervously. It wasn't a threat, Ryu whispered, stepping even closer. It was a promise. Now get the hell out of my sight before I forget we are in public. Kong swallowed hard. He looked at Maya, then back at Ryu, before giving a stiff, mocking bow and walking briskly away, disappearing into the crowded room. Maya stood frozen. Her heart was pounding so loudly she couldn't hear the string quartet playing in the background. Ryu finally turned to her. The murderous rage in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by something dark, possessive, and painfully intense. He looked at her bare arm where Kong had touched her, his jaw clenching so hard she thought his teeth might shatter. Ryu. Jia's whiny voice drifted over. She had followed him. What is going on? Why did you leave me standing there to talk to your assistant? Ryu didn't look at her. He kept his eyes locked firmly on Maya's. Maya, go to my car. No. Sir, the gala just started. You need to secure the investments with the... I said. Go to the car, he interrupted, his voice a low, vibrating command that brooked absolutely no argument. She didn't say another word. She turned on her heel and practically fled the ballroom. As she rushed through the opulent lobby of the hotel, her mind was racing frantically. Why did he react like that? He broke character. He nearly started a gang war in the middle of a high society charity event. Over her. A woman he claimed he would never love. She reached the underground parking garage. The air was cool and damp. His driver, Mr. Lee, was standing by the sleek, black armored Maybach. He saw her expression and immediately opened the rear door without a word. Maya slid into the plush leather seats, her hands shaking. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to regulate her breathing. He was going to fire her. Or worse. He had exposed a weakness, and in his world, weakness was a death sentence. And she was the cause of it. 10 minutes later, the heavy door clicked open. Ryu slid into the seat next to her. He brought the scent of the cold night air and whiskey with him. The door slammed shut, enclosing them in the quiet, soundproof cabin of the car. Drive, Ryu commanded. The car smoothly pulled out of the garage. They sat in total silence as the neon lights of Seoul blurred past the tinted windows. The tension in the back seat was so thick it was suffocating. Maya stared out the window, refusing to look at him. Suddenly, she felt his hand. His long, warm fingers gently wrapped around her wrist, pulling her hand away from her chest. She gasped softly as he pulled her across the wide seat, right into his space. Look at me, he commanded softly. She turned her head. He was staring at her with such raw, unfiltered hunger that it made her breath catch in her throat. The playboy was gone. The cold CEO was gone. This was the man who owned the night. You told me to stay in the shadows, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. You told me to let you play your games. Why did you intervene? He reached up, his thumb brushing against her cheekbone, tracing the line of her jaw. Because he touched what belongs to me. I don't belong to you, she shot back, a sudden surge of defensive anger flaring in her chest. We have a contract. Friends with benefits. I am your employee. I am not your property, Ryu. And you made it very clear that I am not your girlfriend. His eyes darkened instantly. The air in the car shifted, becoming heavy and electric. He leaned in, his lips hovering mere inches from hers. She could feel the heat of his breath. Do you think a piece of paper means anything to a man like me? He rasped, his voice dropping an octave. Do you think I care about the rules when another man puts his hands on you? You made the rule. She cried out, frustrated tears stinging the corners of her eyes. Don't fall in love. You said it. You warned me. You parade these women around, you smile at them, you touch them, and I just have to stand there and watch. And I do it. I play my part. but you don't get to act like a jealous lover when someone else looks at me." He stared at her, his chest heaving slightly. He looked furious, but underneath the anger, there was a desperate, agonizing crack in his armor. "You think this is easy for me?" He whispered violently. "You think watching you stand in the corner, looking like a goddess, while I have to pretend to care about these vapid, empty people is easy? Then why do it?" She demanded. Before she could say another word, he closed the distance. His mouth crashed down on hers, hungry, bruising, and desperate. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was a claim. It was an apology and a threat all rolled into one. She gasped against his lips, her hands flying up to push him away, but the moment her fingers touched the lapels of his tuxedo, she gripped the fabric and pulled him closer instead. She was pathetic. She hated how much power he had over her. Maya kissed him back with all the frustration and hidden love she had been burying for 2 long years. He pulled away, both of them panting. He rested his forehead against hers, his hands tangling in her hair. "Because if they know about you," he breathed, his voice laced with pure terror, "they will kill you to get to me. And if I lose you, Maya, I will burn this entire city to the ground." His words were still hanging in the heavy heated air of the Maybach, echoing in Maya's ears like a death sentence. "I will burn this entire city to the ground." She stared into his dark, desperate eyes, her breath caught entirely in her throat. For 2 years, she had convinced herself he felt absolutely nothing for her. But the raw, violent truth in his voice completely shattered that illusion. Before she could even open her mouth to respond, to ask him what the hell that meant for them, the world exploded. A massive, deafening crunch of metal on metal violently threw them across the backseat. The Maybach spun wildly out of control, tires screaming against the wet asphalt. Maya screamed as her shoulders slammed hard against the leather door panel. "Get down," Ryu roared. In a fraction of a second, the tender, desperate lover vanished, and the lethal syndicate boss took over. He grabbed her by the waist, practically throwing her onto the floorboards of the car, shielding her body entirely with his own heavy frame. The piercing, rapid-fire sound of automatic weapons erupted through the night. The supposedly bulletproof glass of the Maybach spiderwebbed instantly as heavy-caliber rounds slammed into the reinforced windows. Sparks flew in the darkness outside as another vehicle aggressively sideswiped them, trying to force their car off the bridge and into the dark, freezing waters of the Han River below. "Mr. Lee, keep moving. Do not stop this car." Ryu barked over the deafening noise, his hand securely holding the back of Maya's head down against the floor carpet. "Holding steady, boss," Mr. Lee shouted from the front seat. The engine roared like a caged beast as he slammed his foot on the gas, violently swerving the heavy, armored vehicle to shake off the black SUV attacking them. Maya was trembling so hard her teeth were chattering. The smell of burning rubber and gunpowder filled the cabin, choking her. She squeezed her eyes shut, burying her face into Ryu's chest. His heart was beating rapidly, but his breathing was terrifyingly controlled. He wasn't panicking. This was his element. This was the violent, bloody reality of the man she had given her heart to. Another sharp jolt sent them flying forward as Mr. Lee aggressively rammed the attacking SUV against the concrete barrier of the bridge. The horrific screech of tearing metal echoed through the cabin. A second later, Mr. Lee slammed on the brakes, causing the enemy car to completely lose control, flip over the barrier, and plummet into the dark waters below. Silence instantly crashed over them, save for the heavy, ragged breathing inside their car. Ryu didn't move off her immediately. He stayed hovering over Maya's trembling body, his eyes scanning the dark road through the cracked windows, his hand firmly gripping a sleek, silver pistol that had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. "Clear, boss," Mr. Lee announced, his voice tight. "We need to get off the main roads." "The safe house in Iriwan?" "No," Ryu said, his voice dangerously low. "They knew my route from the gala. There's a rat in my house. Take us to the private estate in the mountains. Nobody knows about it." Ryu finally shifted his weight off her, gently grasping Maya's arms and pulling her up from the floorboards. His eyes frantically searched her face, his thumbs brushing over her cheeks, checking for blood or glass. "Are you hurt? Maya, talk to me. Are you hit?" His voice was laced with a frantic edge that she had never heard before. The untouchable King of Soul looked completely terrified. "I'm fine," she gasped out, her voice shaking violently. "I'm okay. Ryu, what just happened? Who was that?" "Kong." Ryu spat the name like a curse, his jaw clenching so hard the muscles jumped. "The Vipers. They didn't even wait an hour. They saw a weakness in the ballroom, and they struck immediately." "A weakness?" she asked, her voice cracking. You mean me? He stopped, his dark eyes locking onto hers in the dim light of the ruined car. He reached out, pulling her flesh against his chest, wrapping his arms around her in a crushing grip. Maya buried her face in his neck, inhaling his scent, trying to ground herself as the adrenaline slowly crashed, leaving her weak and exhausted. I am so sorry, Maya, he whispered violently into her hair. I tried to keep you out of this. I tried so damn hard to push you away, but I couldn't do it anymore. They didn't say another word for the rest of the agonizing hour-long drive. The black Maybach, battered and scarred, finally pulled into a heavily fortified, hidden compound deep in the mountainous outskirts of the city. High concrete walls, steel gates, and armed guards in black tactical gear instantly surrounded the vehicle the moment they parked. Ryu stepped out first, extending a hand to her. Maya took it, her legs feeling like absolute jelly as she stepped onto the gravel. Secure the perimeter. Nobody goes in or out. If a bird flies over this property, you shoot it down, Ryu commanded his men, his voice echoing with absolute authority. He didn't let go of her hand. He pulled her along, leading her into the massive, modern glass and steel mansion. Once the heavy oak doors shut safely behind them, the silence of the massive house felt deafening. Hey guys, if you are on the edge of your seat right now, do not forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. It takes a lot to bring these stories to life, and your support means everything. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Maya is strong enough to survive Ryu's dangerous world? Let's dive right back into the drama. Ryu pulled his ruined tuxedo jacket off, throwing it carelessly onto a pristine white sofa. He unbuttoned his crisp white shirt, revealing the harsh, dark ink of his syndicate tattoos stretching across his muscular chest and shoulders. But it wasn't the tattoos that caught Maya's eye. It was the long, deep gash on his upper arm, steadily dripping dark blood onto the marble floor. Ryu, you're bleeding, she gasped, rushing forward. He looked down at his arm as if he hadn't even noticed the injury. It's nothing. Just a graze from the shattered glass. Sit down, she ordered, her executive secretary instincts kicking in, overriding her panic. Where is the first aid kit? He pointed to a sleek cabinet near the massive open kitchen. Maya quickly grabbed the heavy red box, bringing it back to the living room. He was sitting on the edge of the sofa, leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees. He looked exhausted. The heavy burden of his crown was practically crushing him. She knelt between his knees, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the antiseptic wipes. This is going to sting, she murmured softly. He didn't flinch as she cleaned the wound. His dark eyes never left her face. They tracked her every movement, burning with an intensity that made her skin flush. The silence between them was so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing down on her chest. Why did you do it? Maya finally whispered, keeping her eyes focused on the bandage she was carefully wrapping around his bicep. Do what? He asked softly. Why did you make that stupid rule 2 years ago? Why did you make me sign a contract promising not to fall in love with you if you... Her voice broke. She couldn't even finish the sentence. It felt too fragile to say out loud. Ryu reached out with his uninjured arm, placing his large, warm hand under her chin, forcing her to look up into his eyes. Because I am poison, Maya, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I knew from the moment you walked into my office for that interview, with your sharp suits and your perfect resume, that you were going to ruin me. You were brilliant, you were beautiful, and you belonged in the light. Not in my dark, bloody world. A tear slipped down her cheek, and his thumb instantly caught it. I wanted you so badly I couldn't breathe, he confessed, his voice breaking slightly. But I knew if I claimed you as mine, if I made you my woman, I would paint a massive target on your back. My enemies would use you to break me. So I lied. I made up that ridiculous rule. I pushed you away emotionally. I played the playboy in public to make sure everyone thought you were just my secretary. Just a casual, meaningless fling behind closed doors. It was the only way I could keep you close without getting you killed. But it was killing me. She cried out, the dam finally breaking. Did you ever think about what it did to me? Watching you smile at those women? Watching you pretend I meant nothing to you? Every single day was torture, Ryu. I thought I was losing my mind. I know, he choked out, pulling her up from the floor and onto his lap. Maya wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his chest as he held her impossibly tight. I know, baby. I am so sorry. I watched it break your heart, and it tore me to pieces. But tonight, when Kong touched you, I lost control. I couldn't pretend anymore. I don't care about the rules. I don't care about the contract. You are mine. You have always been mine. They held each other in the dark, the reality of their new situation crashing down on them. The secret was out. The Viper clan knew she was his weakness. The game of pretend was over, and a very real, very bloody war had just begun. The next morning, the safe house was a hive of chaotic activity. Maya woke up alone in the massive master bedroom. The sheets beside her were cold. She quickly dressed in a simple pair of jeans and a sweater she found in the closet, practically running down the grand staircase. The living room had been transformed into a war council. A dozen massive, heavily armed men in black suits were gathered around the large dining table, reviewing blueprints and encrypted laptops. Ryu stood at the head of the table. He was back in his ruthless element. A black button-down shirt tightly hugged his frame, his sleeves rolled up, revealing his tattoos. He looked cold, calculating, and entirely deadly. Kong attacked me in public, which means he has backing, Ryu barked, his voice leaving absolutely no room for argument. He wouldn't make a move like that unless he knew he had the advantage. I want the entire Viper clan territory locked down. Nothing goes in or out of the southern ports. Choke their supply lines. Boss, one of his lieutenants, a massive man named Gene, spoke up hesitantly. If we hit the ports, the police will get involved. The media will have a field day. I do not care about the media. Ryu roared, slamming his fist onto the heavy wooden table, making the coffee cups rattle aggressively. They tried to kill her. They tried to run my car off a bridge. I want Kang's head on a silver platter by midnight, or I will start executing underbosses myself. Am I clear? Crystal clear, sir. The men chorused instantly, bowing respectfully. Maya stood frozen on the bottom step, completely overwhelmed by the sheer, unbridled power radiating from the man she loved. This wasn't the CEO. This wasn't the lover who held her gently the night before. This was the monster everyone warned her about. Ryu's eyes finally flicked up, catching her standing on the stairs. Instantly, the terrifying rage melted from his face. He dismissed his men with a sharp wave of his hand. They quickly filed out of the room, leaving the two of them entirely alone. He walked over to her, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her flush against him. He kissed the top of her head softly. "Did you sleep?" "Not really," she admitted, resting her hands flat against his chest, feeling the steady, calming beat of his heart. "Ryu, what is happening? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fix this," he said firmly, his eyes darkening with a dangerous promise. "You are going to stay here. The guards have strict orders. Nobody comes through those gates. I have to go into the city to root out the rat in my organization." "I'm coming with you," she said immediately, stepping back and looking him dead in the eye. Ryu frowned, a look of pure exasperation crossing his handsome face. "Maya, absolutely not. It's too dangerous. You are staying here where I know you are safe." "I am your executive secretary, Ryu," she argued passionately, her voice rising. "I know your company's financials better than you do. I know the board members' schedules, their private accounts, their habits. If there is a mole feeding information to the Vipers from inside Jinwoo Enterprises, I am the only one who can find the paper trail quickly. You need me. I need you breathing." He shouted back, grabbing her shoulders tightly. "Do you not understand what happened last night? They want to use you to break me. If they get their hands on you, they will torture you just to hear me beg. I am not risking your life so you can play detective." "I am not playing detective," she yelled, refusing to back down from his intimidating glare. "I am protecting my man. You don't get to lock me in a glass tower while you fight a war over me. We are in this together. The rules have changed, Ryu. You said I was yours. Act like it." He stared at her, his chest heaving, his dark eyes wide with shock. Nobody ever yelled at Ryu Jinwoo. Nobody ever defied him. But she wasn't backing down. She was absolutely terrified, but she refused to be a helpless damsel waiting for the Mafia king to save her. A slow, dark, predatory smirk slowly spread across his face. He leaned down, crushing his lips fiercely against hers in a hot, bruising kiss that completely stole her breath. "God, you are going to be the absolute death of me," he rasped against her lips, his hands gripping her waist tight enough to bruise. "Fine. You come with me. But you don't leave my sight for a single second. Do you understand?" "Understood, boss," she whispered, a defiant spark in her eye. An hour later, they were back inside Jinwoo Enterprises. The towering glass skyscraper felt completely different today. It no longer felt like a place of business. It felt like a battlefield. Ryu and Maya locked themselves inside his secure executive suite. While he managed his underground lieutenants through burner phones, she furiously hacked into the company's secure financial mainframe. She bypassed firewalls and dug deep into the offshore accounts of the senior board members. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her heart pounding rapidly in her chest. If Kong knew Ryu's route last night, someone high up had to have tipped him off. Someone with access to the executive schedule. Hours ticked by. The tension in the room was suffocating. Maya cross-referenced bank transfers, private emails, and calendar logs. And then she found it. Her blood ran completely ice-cold. She stopped typing. She couldn't breathe. "Ryu," she whispered, her voice shaking in absolute horror as she stared at the glowing monitor. He instantly dropped his phone, rushing over to stand behind her chair. "What is it? Did you find the rat?" It's not a board member," she stuttered out, her hands trembling as she pointed to the encrypted email chain on the screen. "It's worse. Much worse." She clicked open the final document. The proof was staring them right in the face. The person who sold them out to the Viper clan. The person who gave Kong the order to attack the car last night. It was Mr. Lee, his personal driver. The man who had been by Ryu's side for over 10 years. The man who was supposedly guarding the door outside the office right this very second. The silence in the office wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, like the air right before a massive storm breaks. Maya stared at the screen, at the bank transfers from a Viper clan shell company into an offshore account registered to Mr. Lee's sister. 10 years. He had been with Ryu for 10 years. He had driven Maya to work, bought her lunch when she was too busy to leave her desk, and smiled at her through the rearview mirror while she secretly pined for the man sitting next to her. Ryu didn't move. He didn't curse. He didn't even breathe. He just stared at the name on the monitor, his face as still and cold as a marble statue. Then, very slowly, he reached for the silver pistol sitting on the mahogany desk. The click of the safety being disengaged sounded like a cannon blast in the small room. "Ryu, wait," Maya whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. His muscles were like iron. "He's right outside the door. If you do this here, the police." "He isn't just a driver, Maya," Ryu interrupted, his voice a terrifying, hollow rasp. "He was my brother. I trusted him with my life. I trusted him with your life." He turned toward the door, his eyes dark with a kind of pain that made Maya's heart ache. He wasn't the pretty boy playboy right now. He was the monster, the man who had been forged in the blood and fire of the soul underworld. He walked toward the heavy oak door with the grace of a panther, silent and lethal. Before he could reach the handle, the door swung open. Mr. Lee stood there, his usual calm expression replaced by something frantic and sweat-streaked. He looked at the gun in Rya's hand, then at the computer screen over Maya's shoulder. He knew. "Boss," Mr. Lee started, his voice cracking. They have my daughter, boss." "Gun." He took her from her school. Ryu didn't lower the gun. His hand was perfectly steady. "You should have come to me, Lee. I would have gotten her back. Instead, you tried to put a bullet in my head. You tried to kill the woman I love." The word hit Maya like a physical blow. "The woman I love." He said it so easily, so naturally, even while he was staring down the man who had betrayed him. "I'm sorry," Mr. Lee sobbed, dropping to his knees. "I'm so sorry. They told me if I didn't give them the route, they'd send her back in pieces. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to be loyal," Ryu whispered. The coldness in his voice was more terrifying than any scream. He raised the weapon, pointing it directly at Mr. Lee's forehead. Maya's heart was hammering against her ribs. She knew what happened to traitors in this world. She knew the rules. But seeing the man who had been a friend for years begging for his life, it was too much. "Ryu, stop." Maya lunged forward, grabbing his arm, pulling with all her strength. "If you kill him, Kong wins. He wants you to lose your mind. He wants you to turn into a butcher so the board has an excuse to dump you. Think, Ryu. Think." Rya's jaw was clenched so tight she thought his teeth would break. He looked at her, then back at the man on the floor. For a long, agonizing second, Maya didn't know which way he would swing. Then, he let out a low, guttural growl and lowered the gun, slamming the hilt of it into the side of Mr. Lee's head. The driver collapsed onto the carpet, unconscious. Ryu stood over him, chest heaving. "Tie him up. Put him in the secure holding room in the basement. And find out where they're holding his daughter. I want her back. And then I'm going to kill every single person involved in this." He turned to Maya, his eyes wild and desperate. "We have to move. No. If Lee is compromised, this building isn't safe. Kong isn't just coming for me anymore, Maya. He's coming for everything I have. And that starts with you." "Hey everyone, The stakes are getting impossibly high. If you're rooting for Maya and Ryu to make it out of this alive, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss the epic conclusion. Also, drop a comment below. Do you think Ryu was right to spare Mr. Lee, or did he just make a huge mistake? Let's get back into the heat of the moment. They didn't go back to the penthouse. They didn't go to the mansion. They went to a place Maya didn't even know existed. A small, nondescript apartment in a crumbling building in the heart of the city's poorest district. It smelled of old wood and rain, a stark contrast to the luxury they were used to. Ryu slammed the door shut, locking 4 different deadbolts. He paced the small living room like a caged animal, his fingers running through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up until he looked like a man on the edge of a breakdown. "I can't protect you," he choked out, suddenly stopping and looking at her. "The mole was Lee. My security is compromised. My accounts are being flagged. Kong has spent months, maybe years, setting this up. He didn't just want to kill me on that bridge. He wanted to dismantle my life." Maya walked over to him, taking his shaking hands in hers. "You can protect me, Ryu. Because I'm not that girl who just fetches your coffee anymore. I'm the person who knows your secrets. And the person who knows how to fight back." He laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "You're a secretary, Maya. You shouldn't be in a dingy apartment in the slums hiding from a hit squad. You should be in a penthouse, covered in diamonds, safe from all of this." "I don't want diamonds, Ryu. I want you," she said, her voice firm. "But you have to stop lying to me. You have to stop treating me like I'm made of glass. If we're going to survive this, I need to know the truth. Why is Kong so obsessed with you? This isn't just about territory. This feels personal." Ryu sighed, sliding down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. Maya sat down next to him, leaning her head on his shoulder. In the dim light of the single flickering bulb, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "Kang's father was my father's partner," he whispered. "They built the syndicate together. But Kang's father was a sadist. He wanted to move into human trafficking, something my father refused to touch. There was a coup. My father won, and Kang's father ended up at the bottom of the ocean. Kong thinks I'm the one who pulled the trigger. He spent his whole life building the Vipers just to tear down what my family built. And he knows. He knows I betrayed the whole empire just to keep you breathing." Maya squeezed his hand. "So we give him what he wants. Or at least, we make him think we are." "What are you talking about?" "He wants to dismantle your life, right? He wants to see you lose your power. So, we let him think he's winning. We leak information that the board is turning against you. We show him that you're desperate. We lure him out of his fortress." Ryu looked at her, a slow smirk spreading across his lips. "You really are a dangerous woman, Maya. You've been spending too much time with me. I've spent 2 years watching you play the game, Ryu. I learned from the best." They spent the next several hours in that cramped apartment, plotting. It wasn't about the friends with benefits rule anymore. That rule was dead and buried under the weight of the bullets and the betrayals. They were partners now, in the truest, most dangerous sense of the word. But as the night wore on, the tension shifted from the war outside to the fire between them. Being in that small space, stripped of the suits and the marble offices, everything felt more raw. Ryu watched Maya as she worked on a burner laptop, his gaze heavy and possessive. "Maya," he said softly, his voice vibrating in the quiet room. She looked up. He was standing right in front of her. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of her collarbone, moving slowly down to the swell of her breast. Her breath hitched. "I broke the rule first," he confessed, his voice a low, dark rumble. "A long time ago. I used to watch you in the office, the way you'd bite your lip when you were concentrating, the way you'd stand up for yourself even when I was being an arrogant bastard. I wanted to tell you. I wanted to throw that contract in the trash and tell the world you were mine. But I was a coward. I was afraid that if I loved you, I'd lose my edge. I'd become weak." "And are you?" she whispered, standing up, her body inches from his. "Are you weak now?" He grabbed her waist, pulling her so hard against him that she could feel the cold steel of the gun tucked into his waistband against her hip. "I've never felt more powerful," he rasped, his eyes burning with a dark, primal hunger. "Because I have something worth fighting for now." He kissed her then, and it wasn't like the desperate, frantic kiss in the car. It was slow, deep, and absolutely thorough. It was a promise, a vow. He tasted like whiskey and danger, and she couldn't get enough. They moved to the small, lumpy bed in the corner, and for a few hours, the world outside, the vipers, the betrayals, the blood, didn't exist. There was only the heat of his skin against hers, the way he whispered her name like a prayer, and the absolute obsession that had finally, terrifyingly, become mutual. But the peace didn't last. Just as the sun began to peek through the grime-streaked windows, Maya's burner phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from a contact shed set up within the company's internal server. Her heart stopped. Ryu, she gasped, sitting up and grabbing the phone. The trap. It didn't work. He was instantly awake, his hand flying to the pistol on the nightstand. What happened? They didn't go for the board members, she said, her voice trembling. They went for my apartment. My sister Ryu. She was supposed to be in London for her study abroad program. But the flight was delayed. She went back to my place to wait for the morning flight. Ryu gripped the phone, his face turning a sickly shade of pale. Did they get her? The screen flickered. A video file began to play. It was grainy, shot from a handheld camera. It showed Maya's younger sister, Mia, terrified, tied to a chair in a room that looked like a basement. And standing behind her, a wicked smile on his face, was Kong. Hello, Jinwoo. Kang's voice crackled through the small speaker. You thought you were so clever, hiding your little pet in the slums. But you forgot that a man like me doesn't just want your business. I want your heart. And since I can't get to your secretary yet, I think this will do as a down payment. You have 2 hours to get to the southern docks. Come alone. No guns. No backup. Or I start sending her back to Maya, piece by piece. The video cut to black. Maya let out a strangled cry, the phone slipping from her numb fingers. Her sister, her innocent, sweet little sister, was in the hands of a psychopath because of her. Because she fell in love with a monster. Ryu lunged out of bed, grabbing his clothes. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated cold. The pretty boy was gone forever. There was only the devil left. I'm going, he said, his voice as sharp as a razor. He said to come alone, Ryu. It's a suicide mission. She screamed, grabbing his arm. I'll kill you both the second you show up. He wants me, Maya. He doesn't care about her. If I give him what he wants, he'll let her go. No, he won't. You know he won't. She was hysterical now, the reality of the situation crushing the air out of her lungs. We need a plan. We need to. Ryu grabbed her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were dead. There is no plan, Maya. There is only one thing left to do. I'm going to go to those docks, and I'm going to trade my life for hers. It's the only way to save her. And it's the only way to make sure you stay safe. Ryu, no. I love you, he whispered, kissing her forehead one last time. That was the rule I shouldn't have broken. But I'm glad I did. Before she could stop him, he shoved her back onto the bed and bolted out the door, locking it from the outside. She heard the roar of a motorcycle engine as he sped away into the morning light. She was trapped. Her sister was a hostage. The man she loved was riding into a trap that he wouldn't come back from. If you guys are as stressed as I am right now, please show some love in the comments. Tell me, what would you do if you were in Maya's shoes? Is there any way for them to get out of this alive? Make sure you're subscribed because the final chapter is going to be absolutely explosive. You do not want to miss the ending of Ryu and Maya's story. Maya didn't waste time crying. She didn't have time. She grabbed the burner laptop, her fingers flying across the keys with a frantic energy she didn't know she possessed. If Ryu was going to be the distraction, then she was going to be the scalpel. She didn't look for Ryu's location. She looked for the one thing Kong cared about more than revenge. His money. The Viper clan's entire infrastructure was built on a series of complex, laundered accounts tied to the southern docks. If she couldn't save Ryu with a gun, she'd destroy the world Kong built with a keyboard. She had 45 minutes. The clock was ticking. The man she loved was walking into the mouth of the beast, and her sister's life hung in the balance. She had broken the rule. She had fallen in love with a dangerous man, and now, she was going to show the world exactly how dangerous his secretary could be. The sound of the motorcycle faded into the distance, leaving Maya in a silence so heavy it felt like it was crushing the air out of her lungs. She stood there for a second, staring at the locked door, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Ryu thought he was protecting her. He thought that by locking her in this room, he was keeping the one thing he loved out of the line of fire. He was wrong. In his world, there was no such thing as a bystander. You were either the hammer or the nail, and she was done being the nail. She didn't have a key, but she had a hairpin and 2 years of watching Ryu's security teams bypass locks during corporate audits. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped the pin twice, the metallic click echoing in the empty apartment like a gunshot. Focus, Maya. She hissed to herself, her voice sounding raw and foreign. She took a deep breath, picturing Ryu's face, picturing her sister's terrified eyes in that video. On the third try, the tumbler clicked. She threw the door open and didn't look back. She didn't head for a car. She headed back to the laptop. She had 40 minutes before Ryu reached those docks, and she needed to turn Kang's world into ash before Ryu stepped off that bike. She sat back down at the desk, her fingers flying across the keys. This wasn't about emails or schedules anymore. This was digital warfare. She bypassed the first layer of the Viper clan's encryption in less than 5 minutes. They were arrogant. They thought their muscle and their guns made them untouchable, but they forgot that in the 21st century, a kingdom is built on data. She found it. The black box account. This was where Kong kept the liquid assets for his entire operation. The payroll for his hitmen, the bribes for the harbor masters, the hush money for the local precinct. It was $60 million of blood money, and she had the digital signature to move every cent of it. She felt a cold, sharp sense of power surge through her. Ryu was the sword, but she was the poison in the well. She set up a time transfer. If she didn't hit a cancel command within the next hour, that $60 million would be distributed to every Major charity in Seoul under Kang's personal name, triggering a massive tax audit and leaving his soldiers unpaid and very, very angry. But she wasn't done. She pulled up the dock security feed. It was a private system, but everything is connected if you know where to look. The screen flickered to life, showing a grainy high-angle view of Pier 17. Her breath hitched. She saw Ryu. He looked so small from this height, a lone figure on a black motorcycle weaving through the maze of rusted shipping containers. He was driving straight into a slaughterhouse. She could see Kang's men positioned on the cranes, rifles aimed at the entrance. She could see Kong himself standing near the edge of the water, her sister huddled on the ground at his feet. "Incoming, Ryu," she whispered, grabbing her coat and the burner phone. She ran out of the building, flagged down a taxi, and shoved a $300 wad of cash at the driver. "South Docks. Don't stop for red lights. Hey guys, we are literally at the finish line of this insane journey. If you're holding your breath like I am, hit that like button right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for?" This is the moment everything changes for Ryu and Maya. Leave a comment. Do you think Maya can make it in time, or is Ryu's sacrifice already set in stone? Let's get to the docks. The taxi dropped her 2 blocks away, the driver peeling off the second the tires hit the pavement. The air at the docks was thick with the smell of salt, diesel, and rot. She could hear the distant cry of gulls, but beneath it, there was a more sinister sound, the low hum of idling engines. She stayed low, moving through the shadows of the containers. Her emerald green skirt was ruined. Her heels were discarded somewhere back near the fence, and her feet were bleeding, but she didn't feel a thing. The only thing that mattered was the weight of the phone in her hand. She reached the perimeter of Pier 17, just as Ryu pulled his bike to a screeching halt in the center of the clearing. The floodlights snapped on, blindingly bright, pinning him in the center of a circle of light. "Ryu Jinwoo." Kang's voice boomed, amplified by a megaphone. "You're late. I was starting to think you didn't care about the girl." Maya watched from behind a stack of lumber, her heart in her throat. Ryu hopped off the bike, raising his hands slowly. He looked calm, but she knew that look. It was the look he wore right before he destroyed a rival board member. It was the look of a man who had already accepted his death. "I'm here," Kong, Ryu shouted, his voice steady. "Let the girl go. She has nothing to do with this. You want me? I'm right here. Unarmed. Just like you asked." Kong stepped out of the shadows, dragging Mia by her hair. The younger girl let out a whimpering cry that sliced through Maya like a blade. Kong was laughing, a dry, manic sound. "Unarmed? You? You're never unarmed, Ryu. You're a viper. But even a viper can't bite when its head is under a boot. Kneel." Ryu hesitated for a fraction of a second, his eyes darting toward Mia. Then, with an agonizing slowness, he dropped to his knees in the dirt. The King of Seoul, the man who had never bowed to anyone, was on the ground. "Good boy," Kong sneered, signaling to his snipers. Maya saw the red laser dots appear on Ryu's chest, dancing over his heart. "You know, I thought about just killing you. But that's too easy. I want you to watch. I want you to watch while I take the only things you have left. First the girl, then your secretary. I know she's close for you. I can smell her fear." This was it. Maya couldn't wait any longer. She hit the send button on the pre-written text shed drafted in the taxi. It went to every single soldier on Kang's payroll simultaneously. It was a screenshot of their empty payroll accounts and the confirmation of the $60 million donation. Seconds later, the silence of the docks was shattered, not by gunshots, but by the sound of dozens of phones chiming at once. She saw the men on the cranes pause. She saw the guards surrounding Ryu look down at their devices. The confusion was instantaneous. One of the lieutenants stepped forward, his face twisted in rage. "Boss? What the hell is this? The offshore account is empty. My pay is gone." Kong spun around, his eyes wide. "What? What are you talking about?" "Shut up and finish him. The money is gone, Kong." The man roared, shoving his phone in Kang's face. "You sold us out. You're donating our cut to the city?" In that moment of pure, unadulterated chaos, Ryu moved. It was like watching a blur of lethal grace. He lunged from his knees, pulling a backup piece from an ankle holster Maya didn't even know he had. He fired 2 shots in rapid succession, taking out the 2 guards closest to him before they could even raise their rifles. He dived for cover behind a steel crate as the docks erupted into a 3-way civil war. Kang's own men were turning on him, thinking had betrayed them. The snipers were firing wildly. Maya didn't think. "Shiar." Nia saw her and scrambled away from Kong, who was too busy screaming orders at his defecting soldiers to notice. Maya grabbed her, pulling her behind a massive shipping container, just as a hail of bullets sprayed the spot where they'd been standing. "Maya." Nia sobbed, clinging to her. I've got you, Maya whispered, holding her tight. "Stay here. Don't move." Maya looked out from behind the container. Ryu was pinned down, pinned by the few loyalists Kong had left. He was out of ammo, clicking an empty chamber. Kong was charging toward his position, a combat knife in his hand, his face a mask of pure, murderous insanity. "I'm going to kill you myself," Kong screamed. Maya looked around frantically. There, on the ground near a fallen guard, was a discarded pistol. She had never fired a gun in her life. She hated them. But as she looked at Ryu, the man who had broken his own heart to keep her safe, the man who was about to die because of his love for her, she didn't hesitate. She ran out into the open, grabbed the gun, and aimed it at Kang's back. Her hands were shaking. Her vision was blurred with tears. "Gun!" she screamed. He spun around, his eyes widening as he saw the little secretary standing there with a weapon. He laughed, a high-pitched, broken sound. You don't have the guts, girl." He took a step toward her, the knife glinting in the floodlights. Behind him, Ryu was trying to stand, his face pale with horror. "Maya, no. Get back." Kong lunged. Maya closed her eyes and pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her off her feet. The sound was deafening. When she opened her eyes, Kong was on the ground, clutching his shoulder, his knife clattering away. He wasn't dead, but he was done. Ryu was on him in a second. He didn't use the gun. He used his bare hands, his face a mask of cold, calculated fury as he delivered a final, crushing blow that sent Kong into unconsciousness. Silence fell over Pier 17. The defecting soldiers had fled, realizing the money was truly gone, and the police sirens were finally wailing in the distance. Ryu stood there, his shirt torn, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead, his chest heaving. He looked at Maya. She was still holding the gun, her body trembling, so hard she thought she'd collapse. He walked toward her, his step slow and heavy. He didn't look like a mafia boss. He looked like a man who had finally come home. He reached out, gently taking the gun from her hands and dropping it into the dark water of the harbor. Then, he pulled her into his arms. He held her so tight she could barely breathe, his face buried in her neck. "I told you to stay in the room," he whispered, his voice broken and thick with tears. "I'm a terrible employee, Ryu." She sobbed into his chest. "I never follow orders." "I know," he rasped, pulling back to look at her. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "You saved my life, Maya. You saved Nia. You destroyed him without even firing a shot." "I fired one," she reminded him with a shaky laugh. "And your aim was terrible," he teased, a ghost of his old, arrogant smirk returning to his lips. "We'll have to work on that." The police lights were reflecting off the water now, red and blue dancing across the rusted steel of the containers. Mr. Lee's daughter was found safe in a nearby warehouse 10 minutes later. Rias lieutenants arrived to handle the cleanup, ensuring the police only found what Ryu wanted them to find. As they sat on the back of an ambulance, wrapped in blankets, the sun began to rise over the Seoul skyline. The city looked peaceful, unaware of the war that had just ended on its shores. Ryu turned to Maya, taking her hand. He looked at the emerald green skirt, now shredded and stained, and the bare, bruised feet. "The contract is over, Maya. No more rules. No more friends with benefits. No more lies." "And what happens now?" she asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. He looked out at the rising sun, his eyes dark but clear. Now, I spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you. I'm stepping down, Maya. I've already set the transition in motion. Jinwoo Enterprises will be a legitimate tech firm. The syndicate. That's a ghost now. I'm done with the blood. You'd give it all up? She asked, shocked. The power, the empire? He turned to her, leaning in until their foreheads were touching. I told you once that I was a man who couldn't be saved. I was wrong. You saved me the moment you walked into my office. I just took 2 years to realize it. He kissed her then, a slow, sweet, and certain kiss that tasted like a beginning. The playboy was gone. The monster was at peace. So, she whispered against his lips. Does this mean I'm getting a promotion? Ryu laughed, a deep warm sound that filled the morning air. Executive Vice President. And my wife. If you'll have me. I'll have to check my schedule, she teased. But I think I can fit you in. Thank you all so much for riding along on this wild journey with Ryu and Maya. If you loved this ending as much as I did, please leave a love emoji in the comments and let me know what kind of story you want to hear next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a beat. Until next time, stay obsessed.